Our second reading is from the Gospel of John. The time came for Hanukkah, the feast of the dedication in Jerusalem. It was winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple area, in Solomon's porch, when the temple authorities surrounded him and said, "How long are you going to keep us in suspense? If you really are the Messiah, tell us plainly." Jesus replied, "I did tell you, but you don't believe. The work I do in my Abba's name gives witness to my favor, but you don't believe because you're not my sheep. My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never be lost. No one will ever snatch them from my hand. Abba, God, who gave them to me, is greater than anyone, and no one can steal them from Abba, God. For Abba and I are one." May God add a blessing to the hearing of this word. Let's pray. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So this morning, as a mini protest of the alarms snatching me out of sleep, I decided to keep my eyes shut and just listen. The first thing I heard after my hand stumbled to turn off the sweet, offending sounds of my alarm was a chorus of birds at varying distances right outside my window. Their voices were singing different kinds of songs, I'm sure communicating a variety of things, all of them coded and foreign to my untrained ears. All of them together making such beautiful music. I listened some more, and I could hear another critter marking out the beat to accompany these birds' songs. And because I'm not an expert on such things, I couldn't identify the source of the beat maker. But his contribution to the early morning chorus was a noticeable and beautiful one. Then I heard a single car drive down the street, headed who knows where at such an early hour. And as I heard it make its way down the street, I wondered about the stories of its occupants. And before I could begin to construct a fictional narrative, I heard a distant plane in the sky carrying who knows how many passengers from one location to another, all bearing even more stories I'll never know. And just as I was getting caught up in this rabbit hole of manufacturing their stories, the sound of the air coming through the vent drew my attention back to the moment right as my next alarm started coaxing me to wake up for real this time. It was surprising, though, to discover just how loud a quiet morning can be. Most times my mornings are drowned out by the sounds of my grumbling that it's too early to be up and rushing about scrambling because maybe I snoozed one time too many. And the rest of my day isn't any quieter as I move from one obligation to another, keeping my mind moving too quickly to be still enough to just listen. So even though I was being sluggish in my start to this morning, it was a real gift to just be silent and to truly listen. This is especially important to highlight as we explore this gospel reading this morning. It wasn't until a few years into this preaching life that I discovered the importance of the shepherd's voice in their ability to care for and guide their sheep. Unlike other situations where one leads and does so from the front, a shepherd is best able to guide the sheep safely and away from danger from the back of the flock. And the only way that's possible is through the use of their voice. The sheep come to know the shepherd's voice, and they're safest when they're able to hear it and respond accordingly. Now, it's easy to imagine how noisy a flock of sheep can be, and even that noise is in addition to any other producers of noise in their environment. It's no surprise that sometimes sheep can miss hearing their shepherd's voice with all those competing noises all around them, and they end up wandering off into sticky situations. I can relate to the easiness of losing track of the one thing that sets us on the path of safety. I'm sure I'm not the only one there either, but I won't ask you to reveal yourselves. I love hearing this gospel coupled with our reading from Revelation, because it continues to challenge the ways in which we're conditioned to hear and see those around us. In John's vision, as he describes it in this revelation, we learn that there was an immense crowd without number from every nation, tribe, people, and language. And they stood in front of the throne and the Lamb. These divisions we cling to on this earth don't carry over into the great hereafter. Our nationalities, our languages, our tribes, our whatevers will get to join together without the divisiveness that these differences create here on this earth. With all the somewhat arbitrary divisions in our world, race, gender, age, religion, I find great hope and promise in these words. These brief sentences break all those divisions right open in ways we may never even understand. Our good shepherd creates room in every flock for each of us. And all of our separate flocks, as we see them, all truly belong to the one flock of our good shepherd. I don't know about you, but I'm extremely grateful for that promise, because there are so many ways in which I would be a flockless sheep without it. I can't think of anyone who doesn't want to have a sense of fully being who they are and being fully accepted as a valued member of any given flock. And to have the added protection of and care from a loving shepherd just sweetens the deal. In a world so divided and filled with the noise of fearing the other, there's hope in John's vision, because these are the ones who survived the great period of testing, in his words. We realize that these people who are standing before this throne aren't only the ones whose lives were led blamelessly or in a praiseworthy way. These people are the ones who have had to make their ways through great ordeals, some of which we may never fully understand. There are also those whose lives were ordinary and whose stories may even have disappeared if not for the few who continue to share them. The good news for the people in John's community is the good news for us here today. Back then, the original audience of this text was a people who were faced with one tragedy after another, anxiously awaiting the return of Jesus, who they believed would finally bring about a new world order. And that's not that different from where we are today, as one headline after the next highlights the dire situations in our lives today. We need to hear this text as one bad thing after another falls into our lives personally. We too are anxiously awaiting a new world order. These words in Revelation are comforting and hopeful. They're comforting in our remembrances of loved ones who've previously died, knowing that they've already made their way through the greatest ordeals in their lives. These words are comforting in our current struggles of every kind, knowing that we also are making our way through great ordeals in our lives. We can do this. The greatest comfort of all is that we don't have to do it by ourselves. We have each other as we journey side by side through the many ordeals we face. We have other sheep in the fold who've gone through the very challenges we continue to face. And they testify to God's ability to get us through our own hardships. When I hear these beautiful promises of God in Revelation, I can't help but stop and feel the comfort and hope in these words. Never again will they be hungry or thirsty. The sun in its scorching heat will never be down on them, for the Lamb who is at the center of the throne will be their shepherd and will lead them to springs of living water. And this is my favorite part. God will wipe away every last tear from their eyes. The pain of the many different kinds of loss we experience in our life is real. The pain of being in the midst of our great ordeals is real. God can and will wipe away every tear from our eyes. And that's very comforting and hopeful, both in the surprising scope of those gathered in the heavens and in the depth of God's careful wiping of our suffering and tears. And so I ask, in the midst of all of this, can we truly hear the voice of our Good Shepherd? Are we still enough to hear our shepherd communicate with us? Are we rushing from one good deed to another and managing one batch of tragedies before dealing with the next, being in constant motion enough that we completely miss the voice leading us from danger to safety? Are we able to hear God's guiding voice? And if so, what is that voice telling us? And if we can't hear the voice, why might that be? I don't have answers to those questions. And I'm only raising them up because I have a strong belief that we are all being challenged in different ways to consider not just who's in our flock, but also to learn how to listen more fully to the steady voice of this Good Shepherd. It's easy to miss among the noise of all of the sheep around us. It's easy to miss as we go about the constant busyness of the world in which we live. And I realize I've asked some really big questions and provided no actual ways of answering them. And I'm okay with that. But as we leave here and prepare to gather next week to begin this work of intentionally listening more deeply and carefully for this Good Shepherd's voice, I pray that all of us can do so with a renewed sense of being a part of something that's greater than we can ever imagine. I pray that we can leave and prepare with a sense of peace in the fact that we're not alone in our struggles, no matter what they may be. I pray that we can leave and prepare with a strong hope in the promises that we've just heard here today. Like sheep, we are under the watchful care of our ever-present, ever-loving God Shepherd. Let's be still enough to hear that protective voice. And then let's be courageous enough to respond accordingly. Amen.